I'm Dee. Welcome to another aerial yoga session. Today I'm going to talk to you about aerial yoga for back pain relief. So what I wanted to do is actually talk through each section. So I'm not going to put together a sequence for you. I just want to put together some principles and some ideas and then give some examples of some postures that can obviously work with those different sections. So I've tried to break it down into 4 categories, all of which will help with back pain. Obviously aerial is very good for back pain. It's not in lieu of any medical help, but it certainly with regular practice is something that can help ease pain, and we can actually hopefully work towards getting a healthier spine again. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is that obviously in full body inversions, aerial yoga allows you to decompress your spine. So by hanging upside down, in theory, we're allowing the vertebrae to space out a little bit more, which is obviously then taking pressure off of different areas of the spine. So anybody that's had any kind of serious back troubles may have heard of inversion tables. They can be quite severe and quite intense, whereas aerial yoga inversions, when done properly, can obviously be a much safer, kinder, softer and more playful way of working with back pain. So I know sometimes when you do have a sore back, it's scary to think of actually doing any exercise because it may feel like you could make it worse. But again, if you do things carefully and slowly and considered, with time and practice, the body will restore and will get used to different movements, and hopefully some of the principles that I put together today can be used to provide some kind of relief and a thought process. So we're not just doing the poses, we're actually talking about why the poses will make a difference. So as I've just said, so full decompression of the spine, and this is obviously done by full body inversion. So I thought what I'd do first of all is show you inverted butterfly, which is one of the basic inversion poses in aerial, and I think this is something that, if practiced, will then give confidence to then go into further inversions. I don't propose to show anybody today how to do further inversions. I just want to focus on the one posture, and I think it's something to practice and get used to, and it's not just this one thing that will help to relieve back pain. There are other areas that we'll get to shortly. So we're going to come into inverted butterfly. So I will just give a demo of this first of all. So we're going to stand underneath the silk, underneath the plumb line, which is the centre of where the silk hangs. And we want to bring the silk down to this top area, roughly around where the sacrum is, that triangle, really strong bone at the top of the body. So we then want to bend the legs, so we're coming on to tiptoes, so we actually start to feel the silk pressing into the back of the body. So we're going to then bring the feet together into inverted butterfly, and we'll just allow the head to come down and the arms to come wide. So as you can probably see from here, we're fully supported from the top of the bottom. And what this is allowing us to do, as I was just explaining, is that we're allowing one vertebrae at a time to decompress. So any pressure that we feel, because obviously the head and everything is quite heavy on the spine, so just being upside down takes all of that pressure off, just allowing the body to rest here, taking some breaths. And if this is your first time upside down, don't stay for too long. What we do is roll the body up, we grab onto the silk behind the knees, and we float the legs wide again, coming back up to seated, and then back down again. So it's just given us the principle of how we can obviously be inverted. We've got full support, so we're fully supported across the, as I say, the sacrum area. It's a really strong bone area, so it can really take the weight of what we're doing with the silk. And as I say, you've got that full support. So just allowing the spine, if you imagine each vertebrae one at a time, just slowly having space between it. When we're standing like this, we've got the weight of the ribs, the chest, obviously everything coming up, the clavicle, the shoulders, and then the head, which is actually really quite heavy, resting on top of your spine. So obviously, as you can imagine, that with our bad postures and habits, we lean over looking at our phone, we're at a computer desk maybe, we're driving a lot, all of these things can cause the spine to decompress in different ways, to compress in different ways. So anything that we can do in terms of inversions is really great. Obviously any kind of spinal mobility and twisting and flexion and extension will also help, but there are other factors to consider as well. So the next one is just to have a think about coming into some inversions which will decompress the spine. So we're then going to work on strengthening the lower back and your core, because obviously if the core is strong and the lower back is strong, it will also give support to the spine and the spinal structure. So what we want to do is strengthen the entire body, but particularly the core. And a strong core is a key component to a healthy back, as they obviously help to support the lower spine. So a couple of different things that I've put together in terms of being able to work into those areas is locust pose, because obviously that's working into the lower back particularly. Flying plank, which is working into the core. The locust pose is also working into the core, and then I'm going to do some laying down inverted sit-ups. So again, things that we can do to strengthen the core, but again, I wanted to show a different variation of things that we can do to build up those areas. So I don't think back pain and aerial yoga is any one specific thing. I think there's a number of things that we need to do in combination that will help. So if we start with locust pose, so again, just coming up to the silk, and we want the silk to be roughly around that kind of just underneath the bony part of the hips. So you might have to come up onto tiptoes slightly. So we're going to take the weight forward, and we want to take the arms up to the back of the silk. Lift the chest, feel as if you're pulling forward with the chest as we're lifting the feet up. And just taking that moment here, feeling the length through the body, so you want to feel like you're pulling away at the feet and through the head, so that we're not crunching anywhere in the spine. And then to come out, walking forward with the feet, and then releasing it back down. So that's our locust pose. So you can see obviously how we're working into the lower spine, but while we're holding the body up, we're also working into the core. So we're now going to come into a plank pose. So bringing the hands down to the front of the mat. We're going to place one foot in the silk, and then the second foot in the silk. So here you really have to engage the core, sucking the belly button up towards the spine, keeping the bottom down, creating that straight line. And you hold that for as long as you can, but with the idea being that you want to build up how long you hold the plank position for. So maybe start with a count of 3 to 5, and as you do it each day more, just trying to see if you can work up to holding it for longer, perhaps building up to 10 seconds, and just giving yourself a daily target to work towards. That's really going to strengthen the core. Holding the body flat takes a lot of pressure from the core, so you're really having to hold that in to support the lower back, so we're creating that strength that we need. Okay, and then we're just going to come into some inverted sit-ups. So bringing one leg into the silk, and we're going to come down, so we want to be under the midline of the silk with the body, and then we're placing both feet in, and we can actually take the legs out, or you can keep them straight. You may feel more safer with the toes wrapped around the silk. So from here we're just going to come into some stomach crunches and some oblique crunches. Again, just another way to start to work some strength into that core. So we're going to take the hands behind the kind of nape of the neck. I like to put my thumbs down my neck. I feel like it just gives some additional support with this. So we're going to keep the legs where they are, and we're just going to start to crunch. So we're gently nodding the head slightly so that we're leaving some space between the chin as we start to come up and crunch. And then we're going to take one leg out of the silk, and we're going to bend that knee as we then oblique towards it. swapping to the other side. So we're just taking that opposite elbow to the opposite knee. So we're then working into the obliques, which is the side part of the stomach, just to make sure that we're getting that full range of strength. And again, starting with as many reps as you feel comfortable with, and then gradually you can obviously add more. You can actually roll up and start to work further into the lower part of the stomach. So you're adding some load onto it. You can bring the knees in to come for a complete crunch. Again, so just different ways that you can play around with the core, but it's really important to build strength in the core, which is going to create that support for the lower back. So again, one of the other things that I mentioned earlier is obviously having that spinal mobility. Keeping the healthy spine requires having, as I said, the decompression of the spine, the strength in the lower back and the core, which will support the spine, and mobility. So we must stretch as well as strengthen for a healthy spine. So what is a good way to think about this is that obviously not all back pain is necessarily caused by something within the back. Obviously if you have a slipped disc or something like that, then it obviously is, but actually lower back pain and other things can be caused by tight hip flexors or tight hamstrings. So there's a couple of really good hamstring stretches that we can do, that we can incorporate twists into. So again, just to start to get that kind of mobility through the spine. It's just obviously a great way to keep everything fit and healthy, and will obviously help to ease back pain as well. So the healthier you can get the spine in all these different movements, the better. So quite a simple exercise for the hamstrings and the hip flexors is to place one leg in the silk, getting your balance. And then we're going to take one hand down and then the other just coming down. So we're actually working into the hamstrings and the hip flexors here. Going forward and holding. And then with the rotation, so twisting of the spine. And coming back down, and then repeating on the other side. So again, you can make these holds longer, you can make the repetitions longer, but we just start to feel the stretch through the spine. Obviously we're working into the back as well. You can come here and hold, you can come here and pulse. Again, whichever feels right for you, keeping one hand there and coming into that rotation. So we're just starting to get that gentle movement. So you can have a play around with different stretches. There are a number of different stretches, but I just wanted to give you some reasonably good examples of things that are not too complicated to start off with, because I think, as I say, there's a nervousness around doing any exercise when your back is in pain. So it needs to be gentle, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be something that you can feel comfortable with straight away. Also, don't be alarmed if you do a little bit of exercise and you can feel that you've done something. That's natural with any exercise, so whenever you do something new for the first time, you will feel some slight discomfort, but you need to continue the practice so that obviously you do start to strengthen and get the flexibility and everything that you need in the body. So that finally leads us on to balance and fluidity. So our spine is the centre of our body. So it's really important that we can obviously keep that balance, which keeps everything central. So balancing poses are really good for that. And also from a fluidity point of view, just trying to keep the spine mobile in every which direction. So it could be as simple as holding onto your silk and moving over to one side so that you're coming into those lateral stretches, so you're working down the side of the body. And we can then come into cat and cow, so coming up to kneeling, taking the silk out in front, folding forward, and then coming into this motion of creating that C curve by tucking the tailbone, dropping the head down, and then coming into cow by dropping down and looking forward. So we're creating this motion, which is just giving that fluidity. And you can have a play around with this, taking it really slow, holding it, or you can be more fluid and dynamic and come into all kinds of waves and movements, just to kind of keep that mobility. So just, again, be quite playful, just get the spine moving in a way that maybe it's not used to. So just bringing it backwards and forwards. So it's really, you have the silk to support you, but keeping that fluidity is really, really good. And then in terms of balancing, again, a number of different poses that we can do, but Warrior 3 is particularly good because it challenges keeping one foot grounded on the floor. We're coming into a forward fold, so we're working the hamstrings and the hip flexors, something that's really important in lower back pain. And then the arms want to move, so being able to keep that, we're working on balance, our core. So it's actually something that encompasses everything as well as the balance here. So coming underneath the plumb line, we get grounded through the feet, and we then take that silk forward and down, just into a forward fold first of all. So I just want to get used to doing that. So that's obviously working into hip flexors, the hamstrings, we're working into the back and the shoulders because we're holding onto the silk. And then as we come down to the next one, so really need to suck the belly button, working into the core, getting our balance as we then bring that back leg up behind. And as you can see, the silk will want to move from side to side, so you really got to work into that core, getting that balance to keep it straight. So it's a really good one to work up to. And it may be the leg only comes up a little way to start off with. If that gives you the support and the balance that you need, that's fine. So maybe that you come to here, and we just start by taking the leg behind first of all, keeping one toe on the floor as you then gradually start to build that leg up, and then gradually working forward and forward and forward. So again, just having a play around with what works for you. So this is really an introduction into what the body needs, various different areas, so we don't just focus on one thing. There's an overall kind of sense of the body needs lots of different things in order for the back to be as healthy as possible. So finally, I would just suggest after you've done any kind of work that the body's not used to, this is really great for the spine. It's actually called aerial shavasana, or people call it cocoon of love. Whichever name you want to use is fine, but this is actually really great. It really just, again, allows the back to relax. So we want to stand underneath the silk, and I've waved the silk out so that we've got some room, but we want to gather it up. Imagine that we're trying to gather enough length that we could actually bring it down to the feet, if that makes sense. So we want to be able to sit into the silk, bring in the silk all the way down so the feet are in the silk, and we're then holding on to the top, laying down into the silk, and we just allow the arms to dangle out the end from the elbows. And this again is just allowing the spine to be weightless. It's completely supported by the silk. So whenever you do any exercise on the silk, just make sure you give the body some time to rest at the end. This is really lovely for the spine. It's allowing the whole kind of back body just to stretch ever so slightly, but in a very gentle and supportive way. And you can stay here for as long as you like. And then we're just going to finish off with a floating child's pose. So we keep the hands out the back of the silk but remain seated in the silk. The arms are here so that we can't topple forward and fall out of the silk. We're just going to bring the head down, so we're curving the spine in the opposite direction. Again, moving the spine in a number of different ways, as I say, is very healthy. And you can stay here for as long as you like. But by incorporating a range of different movements into a sequence will help with any kind of back pain that you may have. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. Thank you very much for watching. Please take care. Namaste.